everyone! Hopefully by now you've all had a chance to watch the introductory video to the course. That video should have done a good job explaining the basic structure of the course, what my expectations are for you, both before and after class, and also just what the grading is going to look like. Now that that's out of the way, I figured it'd be a good time to actually go into what the course is actually going to be about. What is logic? What is critical thinking? And why should we care? So that's what we're going to go over right now. Alright, so I figured a good way to start introducing what I mean by logic and critical thinking would be to think about topics that people feel passionately about, topics that people have really strong feelings about, and maybe just discussing some of those things briefly. So, I don't know, what kind of things do people have strong feelings about? Let's go through some lists. You can get controversial, why not? Abortion. That seems like that's a topic that people have really strong feelings about, really strong opinions about. What are some other topics? Religion. That's one that tends to invoke strong feelings. It seems like people have real confidence in what they believe about religious topics. Let's actually, we can do this with non-controversial things too. I've heard people have really aggressively loud opinions about the new Star Wars movies, and whether or not they're any good or not. That's a topic that seems to invoke strong feelings in people. I certainly have my opinion. I've heard people have very strong, very loud opinions about who the best basketball player of all time is. Okay. So I think, those are some just examples, and fill in whatever other topics you might want, of things that people sometimes feel strongly about. Okay. And my hope is probably many of you feel strongly about some of those topics too. And if not, insert some other topic that you do feel strongly about. Okay. So everything that I just listed, all the examples we just went through, those are things that people, we've said, feel really passionately about, that they feel really strongly about. Are those topics that people tend to agree about, though? Probably the opposite, in fact, right? Those are topics where we're probably going to find the strongest disagreements. Again, just amongst the 40 people in this classroom. Right? I'm guessing I can find 10 to 15 strongly held, directly contradictory beliefs on any of those topics. And again, we can get really granular to sort of unimportant, kind of silly disagreements that people have, but we can also go up super big, super important disagreements that people have too. People feel really strongly about a whole bunch of stuff, but that doesn't in any way eliminate disagreement. All right, so we have a whole bunch of people who really strongly believe certain things, right? And depending, for some of you, perhaps these beliefs are deeply held and very important to your sense of self. Okay, but we've got other people with the exact opposite beliefs, and everyone feels equally confident. In fact, I've never encountered anyone in all of my years of teaching, and I keep waiting for someone to actually sort of stand up and try this. But no one's ever actually done it. I've never met anyone who ever says, the things that I believe the strongest about, my most deeply held beliefs, I don't know what I'm talking about with any of that stuff. I'm really dumb, and I have no reason whatsoever to believe anything that I believe. Never seen it. Never heard it. Everyone takes themselves to be rational. I'll define what I mean by rational in a minute. But everyone takes themselves to be rational. Everyone thinks they have good reasons to believe the things that they believe. Right? No one thinks they're being stupid and holding whatever beliefs they happen to hold. Right? And indeed, a lot of people are really, really confident about the beliefs that they hold because, precisely, they think they're the right belief. They think their beliefs are true. Okay. Well, what's the problem then, right? Well, the problem is you've got a whole lot of people with really strong beliefs, and all of them believe that their beliefs are true, and all of them believe that they have really good reasons for believing the things that they believe. What is this a recipe for? Disagreement, conflict, Twitter, Reddit, the nightly news. Take your pick. This is a recipe for widespread disagreement. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, there's ways that people can disagree with one another that's actually really productive, that can actually sort of further the cause of sort of human knowledge and human development. But it's important to recognize that the sheer fact that someone feels confident about some belief that they hold doesn't really mean anything, because I could find someone who feels really confident about the exact opposite thing too. All right, so if this is the situation we find ourselves in, and again, I don't think we have to look too far to find evidence that this is the situation indeed that we find ourselves in, what do we do? What is the person who wants to have true beliefs supposed to do in this case, right? You all believe lots of stuff. You all think you are right, probably. But you all also disagree with one another. What can we do? Where can we go with this? Right? This is what logic and critical thinking helps us with. What logic is concerned with is what things am I actually justified in believing, and what of my beliefs am I actually not justified to hold, right? What things sort of seem as if they're right to me, but actually are not. Right? And so that's what we're going to cover, both logic and critical thinking. We'll talk a little bit how those differ perhaps later in the course. For now, that's fine to treat them as the same. It's basically the study of how we can go about having responsibly formed beliefs. All right. So that's my best little introduction, at least. Let's start breaking down this a little bit detail. Let's try to figure out what it is I mean when I say that everyone takes themselves to be rational. So rationality is a word that gets thrown around a lot, and people can mean a lot of different things by it, so let me begin by just defining exactly what it is that I mean by it. When I say that a belief is rational, what I mean is that a person holds the belief because there is good evidence or good reasons to believe that the belief is true. The important part of that definition is the because. Right? Why does a person believe what they believe? If a person's belief is formed in the right way, what I'm saying is that that's a rationally formed belief. Right? So what's this right way? What's the right way to form a belief if it's to be a rational belief? Right? Your belief is rational if it's on the basis of reasons. Right? If there are good reasons to think that what you believe is true. Right? We can also think of reasons here in terms of evidence. Right? If I was to argue to all of you that the sun was actually blue, not yellow as it looks to us, you would, I think, if you were, being sound-minded, you would ask me for evidence. Right? You wouldn't just take my word for it in that case, because it doesn't look like it's blue. Right? And so you'd want to hear evidence from me to justify the belief. Right? A rationally held belief is a belief that you hold because of some bit of evidence, some reason. Right? That gives you reason to think then, again, this is the second key part of this, believe that the belief is actually true. Right? When we're talking about a rationally held belief, what we're talking about is whether or not the belief is true. Not do I want the belief to be true, not would I like the belief to be true. What's actually true, and what does the evidence suggest is actually true. All right. So that's what we mean by a rationally held belief. Now, precisely what this looks like can vary wildly, right? There's all different kinds of reasons people can have for the things that they believe, and there's all different kinds of evidence people can supply for their different beliefs. And we'll talk about all those differences as the semester goes along. Indeed, well, actually, the very first day of class, that'll be one of the things we discuss together. What counts as sort of good reasons or good evidence. But that's what we mean by a rationally held belief. So let's contrast that with some things, right? One thing that it doesn't mean to have a rationally held belief is where you already believe that something is true, and then retroactively after the fact, try to find evidence to confirm what it is you already think. Now, do we encounter people doing this? All the time. Right? All the time we see instances of sort of people sort of working backwards. They already know what the answer has to be, and then they don't actually, not trying to figure out the answer, they're trying to figure out how they can establish the answer that they already hold is correct. That's a belief that's formed on such a basis simply is not a rationally held belief. This is not a good instance of reasoning. Because the reason you should hold your beliefs, if they're rational beliefs, is because of what the evidence says. And again, this could well mean you change your beliefs, right? I mean, if the evidence changes, what you believe may well change too, if it's rationally formed. The other thing this means is that just because you want something to believe or are confident that something is true or whatever, right, that does not make the belief actually true. A rationally formed belief actually needs to be supported by evidence, by reasons, above and beyond the fact that we may like some belief to be true or not like some belief to be true. Right. Now, most of the time when you see people arguing on the internet, do we see a lot of rationally formed beliefs as I've defined it? No. Right? And indeed, well, again, we'll talk about this first day of class. It's actually might be a really tiny percentage of all of our beliefs, I'm including myself in all of this, that are actually rationally formed in the way that I'm talking about here. Right? So, what does this mean? What can we do with this? Well, what this means is we need to actually study how to do the thing that we all are trying to do. Because again, like I just said, everyone takes themselves to be rational. Everyone takes themselves to have good reasons for the things that they believe. Logic and critical thinking, these are the studies of how we can go about actually accomplishing the thing we're all trying to do, to have rational beliefs. One important note here about rationality as well, though, nothing I've said so far implies any kind of conflict between rationality and emotion. Right? Indeed, you can feel very passionately, very angry about a belief. You can be sad about a belief, right? You can be happy about a belief, and the belief is still rationally formed, right? There's no, in our culture, there's frequently this talk as if reason and emotion are in conflict, and I think that's completely unwarranted. It's a completely unfounded assumption. What is the case, that the potential for things to go wrong, feeling strongly about something, be it positively or negatively, that in and of itself isn't really evidence for a belief to be true or false. Right? It can accompany a belief that you otherwise have really good evidence for. There are actually a lot of philosophers who have argued that if you correctly recognize that something is unjust and that recognition doesn't make you doesn't make you angry, that something's actually wrong with you. Aristotle, for example, argues this, that you should get angry when you recognize an injustice. But he also says, if you're angry, you might be likely to misidentify what's unjust and what's not. So the sheer fact that you feel strongly about something, that in and of itself isn't evidence for whether or not what you're saying is true or false. However, it may well accompany a belief that is indeed well formed, right? So you can have rationally formed beliefs that you still feel very passionately about. What's going to make the belief rational, though, is the evidence that you have in favor of it, or the reasons that you can give in favor of it, right? And again, my sort of, if you want a justification of this claim, right, sort of as a preliminary sense, I can find two people who feel really passionately about exact opposite conclusions, right? That in and of itself doesn't seem like it's going to help us figure out what's actually true. All right. So now we've got a sense of what I mean by rationality. Let's finish up a little bit with this introduction to logic. So I wanted to just begin this sort of conclusion with a quote from my father-in-law, actually. My father-in-law, and I don't think he's joking when he says this, my father-in-law has often said to me, I'm often in error, but I'm never in doubt. And indeed, I feel like that perfectly encapsulates many people, right? All of us, and again, I'm never excluding myself from any of these things that I say. It's always really comforting to believe that we've got things figured out, right? We'd all much rather feel confident in our beliefs and feel strong in our beliefs than allow any kind of uncertainty. And we'll talk about why. There's all kinds of reasons for why that's sort of psychologically true about humans. We'll talk about that as the semester goes along. But one of the strongest things I can sort of recommend, I guess, as you're beginning the study of logic, is to leave a space for acknowledging uncertainty. Leave a space for acknowledging where you don't know something. Right? There's been really interesting work done, research done, that suggests that actually the more a person knows about a topic, the less confident they tend to be in asserting sort of broad, big things about the topic. Conversely, the less someone knows about a topic, they have no problem whatsoever with loudly and proudly proclaiming really strong absolute statements. And it's thought that the reason for this is that the more you actually learn about something, the more you become aware of the nuances. Right? If our goal is to form rationally formed beliefs, right, beliefs that we hold for good reasons, right, well, there's going to be all kinds of conflicting reasons, all kinds of conflicting evidence that we encounter when we really seriously investigate topics. Now, not every topic is worthy of serious investigation, right? If my wife and I are trying to decide what restaurant we're going to go to, yeah, it would be great if we found a better restaurant rather than, a crummy one. But if we get it wrong, the stakes aren't super high. But, as, say, the last, 4 months have demonstrated, there are some topics where getting it right really matters. And in those cases, most of all, that's where we'll need to be open to the complexities, the complications of the world, and suspend our tendency to form strong absolute claims, right? That way we can actually investigate and evaluate the evidence on its own terms. And that way our beliefs will be rational, and that way what we believe will be true. And we'll all be accomplishing the thing that we take ourselves to be doing all the time, right? Sort of my ultimate claim. You all already think you're rational. If this course does its job right, it'll help you accomplish what you already want for yourself. Alright, that's it for this introductory video. What we'll do in the first day of class, we'll talk a little bit more just about what logic is. I've got a little article for you all to read. And then we'll begin the semester from there, start working through the textbooks. So get those textbooks as soon as possible. We'll need them by the second week of class. And have a good one. Bye!